General Yue Yun, the young general, travels through time and is reborn. He builds a team alone, eliminating treacherous officials and driving out incompetent rulers, reshaping mountains and rivers. Chapter 1. Yue Yun's Rebirth as a Thief. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. In the early Southern Song dynasty, in January of the 12th year of Shaoxing, by the Dongting Lake. Brother, you can't die. If you also die, we won't be able to survive. I vaguely heard a girl crying in my ear, and the boy lying on the broken bed suddenly opened his eyes. Following the sound of crying, I saw a young girl with delicate features standing in front of the bed, crying bitterly. At the moment when I saw her face clearly, a massive amount of memories and emotions flooded into the young man's mind. Luan, descendants of bandits. In my past life, I was a minister and had to die. In this life, I am a bandit and I am content to seek revenge. Zhao Go. My Yue Yun has returned. You have acted for your own selfish interests, listened to the words of treacherous officials, harmed loyalty and goodness, and abandoned the people of the Central Plains. How dare you call yourself the ruler of the great Song dynasty? 20 years ago, his soul pierced through a small landlord and he earned a fortune, but he was assassinated by corrupt officials. 15 years ago, he was reborn as an official. The Jin army invaded the south and died in battle in Qinzhou. 10 years ago, he was reborn as the son of Yu Fei and accompanied him in the northern expedition against the Jin dynasty. His army was stationed in Bianjing and a major event was about to be completed. However, he was feared by treacherous rulers and ministers and was executed in Hangzhou. Now that I live another life, as a bandit, I will never be bound by any ties and fulfill my previous life's aspirations. In this life, Zhao Go must repent and Qin Hui must repay his life. In this life, we must recapture the Central Plains, and let Jingkong shed his shame. In this life, every family must have land, and the common people must have enough to eat. Crossing through and resurrecting again, Yue Yun, who had already become Luan, quickly calmed down and his emotions gradually stabilized, concealing the murderous intent in his eyes. Huan, why are you crying? I'm not dead. Luan, who suddenly spoke up, startled the little girl in front of the bed who was crying with her head down. Brother, you're really awake. The little girl was pleasantly surprised and burst into tears as she pounced on him. Because she was too happy, the crying in her mouth became even louder. The little girl in my arms is called Lu Huan. She is not Lu En's biological sister, but the orphan of his grandfather's brothers. She has been together since childhood and has a deep emotional connection, and is no different from her biological siblings. 7 years ago, following Yang Yao's rebellion and failure, my grandfather and uncle died in battle. The huge red maple village they founded was completely divided up. Now, the population has declined, with less than 100 people, relying solely on more than 30 acres of barren land, thin fields, and fishing to survive. Don't cry, Luan sat up and helped his sister up. Watching her brother come back to life from death, Lu Huan couldn't hide her excitement and tears streamed down her face. Brother, you've been unconscious for so long, and we thought you couldn't survive. I'm lucky, how could I die so easily? Luan looked around and saw that the room was very dilapidated and deserted, with no one else around. He casually asked, where is my mother? In the original owner's memory, although my mother was a fisherwoman, she was knowledgeable and reasonable, and very good at dealing with people. Because she acted fairly, only a few villagers remained and did not abandon the village. After her eldest and second brothers passed away early, she poured all her love into Luan. Even if she made a mistake and caused trouble, she would still protect him, otherwise she would have been disabled by her father when she was young. Lu Huan, who had just stood up straight and stopped crying, immediately threw herself into Lu En's arms and buried her head in tears. Mother, I'm dead. These words rang in his ears, and he could only feel a thunderous explosion, as he inherited the emotions of the original owner and couldn't help but feel dizzy. The stomach also began to contract, and the heart suddenly became uncontrollable, with a knife-like pain. How could a mother die without disaster or illness? Ever since you fell into the water and had an accident. My mother has been watching over you without thinking about food and tea. The Song family said you couldn't live and came to make trouble many times. My mother was only angry at them and couldn't come up in one breath. Lu Huan burst into tears. Luan couldn't help but shrink his pupils, his teeth creaking, his hands clenching uncontrollably, his nails piercing into his flesh, and his arms trembling. Song Hao. During the uprising and rebellion, Song Hao's village was not strong enough. In order to win over the Red Maple village and resist the government, he used 500 acres of high-quality paddy fields as his dowry, allowing his daughter Song Xian and Lu Anding to marry each other, which is well known to everyone. Later, the massive uprising failed, and Song Hao defected to the government and transformed into a legitimate landlord. Now he wants to go back on his word, openly and secretly expressing it multiple times. This time, he must have thought that Luan was dead, so he openly came to force him. Now it's even more about forcing his mother to death. If this revenge is not avenged, how can we establish a foothold in the Red Maple Fortress? Luan pushed away his younger sister, and as soon as he got up, he was hugged by Lu Huan, who saw his thoughts. "Brother, you can't go. If you die, we won't have a way out." He was instantly in place. 1,000 soldiers and horses dare to face it, just a Song Hao, he is naturally not afraid. But now that he has just been resurrected, he is alone and has no one to use the Red Maple Fortress. Song Hao, with thousands of followers and hundreds of minions, is now seeking revenge recklessly, which will only implicate his family. Once we accumulate some strength, we will definitely take Song Hao's dog head as compensation. He gradually stabilized his emotions and comforted Lu Huan, but still did not see his father appear. "Where's my father? I have something to tell him." Father Lu Ping was weak and did not follow his grandfather to fight against Dongting Lake like other uncles, so he did not lose his life in the Great War 7 years ago. Therefore, after the death of his grandfather and uncle, he was unable to protect the Red Maple Fortress, and the Water Fortress rapidly declined. He enjoys reading and also wants to cultivate his children into intellectuals. Unfortunately, Luan envies his grandfather and uncle for dominating the world, only likes knives, guns, and clubs, and has no interest in reading. After my mother passed away, the Song family still came to cause trouble. My father couldn't bear the disturbance and went to discuss the termination of the contract early yesterday morning. He should be back today. Solve it early. When the time came to seek revenge, Luan also avoided the involvement of old feelings, and a fierce look flashed in his eyes. After speaking, he was about to go to his mother's grave to pay respects when he suddenly heard someone running into the courtyard and shouting, "Huan Huan, it's not good, Uncle Jiu has an accident. What else can happen if we go to terminate the contract?" Luan's mind was buzzing and exploding, and his eyebrows furrowed tightly. Uncle Jiu is Lu Ping, the 9th in the Red Maple village, and the father of Luan and Lu Huan. At the age of 14 or 15, Lu Fu was a younger brother of the same generation. When he ran into the house and saw Luan, he was pleasantly surprised and said, "Brother Wu, how are you?" Luan didn't answer, but Lu Huan urgently asked, "What's wrong with my father?" Lu Fu lowered his eyebrows and replied, "The Song family asked Uncle Jiu to sign on a piece of paper, and they also asked many people to witness it. If Uncle Jiu didn't sign, they would lock him in the house and not let him leave." "What did you sign?" Lu Huan jumped in anxiety. "They all speak ill of Brother Wu, who is ignorant, idle, bullying women and children, and so on. I've been listening to them for a long time." Upon hearing these words, Lu Huan's face turned red with anger, and she opened her mouth to argue, but couldn't speak. Bullying people too much. Bullying women, bullying men. Do you really think there's no one in Hongfeng village? My mother has already been forced to death. If I don't bring my father back today, I'll have to leave the Red Maple Village tomorrow when my heart clears up. Reincarnation as a person will never allow similar things to happen again. Luan involuntarily clenched his fist and was about to leave when he heard an unbridled shout from outside the courtyard. Luan, are you dead or not? Whether you're dead or not, you have to come back with us today. Luan's anger was already soaring. How could he hear this? Quickly walking into the courtyard, I saw two servants from the Song family rushing in with sticks in their hands. Good kid, you've been pretending to be dead these days, not even getting up when your mother dies. You're really tough. No matter how hard you are, you can't escape the master's hand. Luan remained silent and stepped forward, punching the servant on the right in the jaw. The servant suddenly fell on his back, unaware of his life or death. Luan, do you dare to fight with us? You should know how powerful the Song family is in Xianyun. The other servant saw his companion being beaten and hurriedly raised the stick in his hand. However, seeing Luan's murderous expression on his face, he felt intimidated and trembled as he retreated. However, his mouth was full of harsh words. But Luan didn't want to talk nonsense to him and pushed forward step by step. Seeing that he was about to be beaten, the servant panicked and quickly shouted, "Actually, it was Miss who asked us to come find you. Miss wants to see you, it's in Hongfeng Village, Mississippi. Does the doll kiss Song Exan?" Luan frowned and only knew the person, but he had no impression of her and had no image in his mind. Brother, Sister Song is different from his father. Since she has come, you can go and take a look. See her. What do you see her doing? It's impossible to talk about love. Chapter 2. Equal status and status. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Without hesitation, Luan took a step forward and waved his hand, chopping at the servant's neck. The servant suddenly fainted and fell to the ground. Lu Fu, tie them up. Lu Huan was speechless for a moment, and perhaps Sister Song could speak up. Why didn't brother pay attention? Keep an eye on the door, I'll go pick up my father and come back. Luan gave an explanation and hurriedly left the house. Before leaving the Red Maple Village, he saw a person standing under a bare maple tree in the distance, dressed in red clothes and unable to see clearly. That's Song Exan, right? There are too many things to do in this life, but there is no time for romance. Luan only glanced, then turned his head and hurried to Gi Town. Gi Town is adjacent to the Miluo River, more than 30 miles away from Hongfeng Village, with hundreds of households. It is the second largest town in Xianyun County, and the Song family is located here. Luan was light and focused, and arrived outside the town in no time. As soon as I entered the town, I felt that it was different from the past, with people coming and going, and it was very lively, with a somewhat festive atmosphere. Luan was worried and didn't care about it. He walked straight down the street towards the Song family, hoping to save his father earlier. But as he walked, he found it even more strange because the closer he was to the Song family, the more people there were. Upon closer inspection, they were all heading towards the Song family. Feeling puzzled, Luan immediately stopped a single elderly man to inquire about the reason. The old man was also kind, so he stopped to talk to him. After listening to the old man's words, Luan's mood became even more complicated. With the slogan of equal status, equal wealth, in the peasant uprising, Song Hao confiscated many lands of the surrounding gentry and wealthy families. After the Dongting Lake uprising was quelled, all of them belonged to him. In recent years, the villagers have become increasingly poor, but their families have become wealthier. The old grain in the granary has grown so much that it has become moldy and rotten, and many of them have been secretly resentful and despised by others. This year, Song Hao didn't know which nerve had gone wrong, but suddenly showed great kindness and began to hold a flowing banquet on the 5th day of the first lunar month. 50 tables are set up every day, half a mile along the street from the entrance. It has been 6 consecutive days, and I don't know when it will end. These people rushing to the Song family on the street are exactly going to eat at the banquet, and so are the elderly. Seeing that Luan didn't seem to be a local, the old man took the initiative to invite him to come with him, so that there could be some care during the banquet. Luan was still hungry, so he didn't refuse. The long tables along the street were filled with people waiting for the banquet, and everyone could not see the end at a glance. The old man is a regular guest, and the steward knows him. He was directly asked to sit at table 42 and register his name. Luan walked with him, wearing worn-out coarse cloth clothes, so they were arranged at the same table. Just as I sat down, I heard the old man introduce me. The dishes on the front and back tables of this flowing water banquet are different. There are 24 dishes at the front, 16 dishes in the middle, and after 30 tables, there are 12 dishes with 4 cools and 8 heats. Your child is lucky and has a good taste today. Luan was thoughtful and didn't say a word. Seeing him unmoved, the old man whispered, I heard that the banquet dishes inside are even more abundant, with a total of 7,749 dishes. I can't imagine how big a table can fit. The wine and meat in Zhu are foul-smelling, and there are frozen bones on the road. Show off when you show off, and even distinguish between high and low. Luan sneered. The old man didn't say much when he saw that Luan was unhappy and didn't agree. Luan finally found peace. I originally planned to break in and take my father back to the Red Maple Village. Unexpectedly, the Song family was setting up a flowing water banquet with a large number of diners. If he insists on using force, the Song family only needs to shout out, and the people waiting for the opening of the 40.50 tables on the street will surround him in groups. When the time comes, he cannot fight or run, and can only be humiliated by others. After weighing, Luan decided to maintain restraint and make a decision when he saw his father. Upon hearing a prolonged opening sound, he withdrew his thoughts and looked up. The uniformed Song family servant, holding a tray, walked along the street. The first cold dish was served on the table, and before Luan could even move his chopsticks, the plate was already clean. Eating a full meal at a flowing banquet can save 3 days of food. Everyone comes empty-bellied, and no one will be humble. For cold dishes, Luan didn't touch them. When the hot dishes were served, he took a few bites of rice and drank half a bowl of hot soup. While everyone was busy eating, he got up and crossed the long street to reach the front door of the Song family. The Song family had a great presence, with 4 people arranged to be on duty at the entrance, standing on either side. Luan took a few steps and stood in front of the stone steps, reporting his identity. Red Maple Village, Luan. The servant on duty may not know Luan, but this name is not unfamiliar to the Song family, and even this flowing banquet is related to him. When he was young, the steward of the Song family came out and looked at him with a smile on his face. You're not dead. You came just right today, come with me. Although Luan had a bad premonition, he came today to take his father back, so he couldn't bear to take a step back. Upon entering the courtyard and being led to the hall, Luan was greeted by a large group of guests dressed in glamorous attire and with elegant manners. 2 rows of tables are placed opposite each other, with abundant dishes and numerous utensils on top. 4 people sit at a table, which is very spacious. Except for guests, there are maids at each table. Some people exchange dishes, and others divide meals for guests. The banquets inside and outside the courtyard are indeed very different. A wall apart, some people compete for an extra bite of food to survive, while others, in order to cope, face seafood and delicacies and only give them a superficial taste. Luan scanned his eyes and saw Song Hao sitting at the main table, feeling even more disgusted and resentful towards him. Song Hao is much wealthier than his earlier years, and his beard has grown significantly. At this time, he is drinking with the middle-aged man on the left and the young man on the right. As Luan looked at him, he also saw Luan, and his face suddenly showed some surprise. Before Luan could speak, he pointed to the position at the right door and arranged directly, Luan, you're not here at the right time. All you have left is leftover food. Take a pair of bowls and chopsticks and take a bite. I just had it on the street. Lu En's tone was a bit cold as he listened to the other person's malicious words. He didn't come in to eat. Oh. Being rejected in public, Song Hao was puzzled. The guests all put down their glasses, bowls, and chopsticks, and turned their gaze to the poor young man in the hall who had never met but was already famous. Taking over the list opened by the butler, Song Hao glanced at it and felt ecstatic, but pretended to be shaking his head and sighing, old ye, how pitiful, regrettable, and pitiful that you have taught such a grandson. He deliberately planned to terminate his engagement with the declining Lu family, invited so many people to attend a banquet, publicly accused Luan of the crime, and asked Lu Ping to sign, just to prove that the Lu family was not worthy and to block the public's words. Now the main leader voluntarily brings the door to his door, which is in line with his wishes. If this is not shamed in public and spread widely through the mouths of guests, wouldn't it not waste the banquet that has been arranged with great effort? So Song Hao's face tightened and he pretended to be angry. He threw away the roster with a loud bang and publicly scolded, Luan, you are willing to fall from grace and do not seek self-improvement. You are sitting at the same table as those lowly people and stealing food. You have ruined the face of Red Maple Village. This old thief is so careful that he wants to provoke himself, which is too simplistic. I didn't come to the Song family to have a verbal argument, and Luan didn't want to argue with him. He calmly replied, people are human beings, born equal, with height, short, thin, and fat. Why do we have high and low status? Waiting for the nobility. As soon as these words were spoken, the guest who had just been whispering suddenly fell silent, even breathing lightly. In a peaceful and prosperous era, these words cannot be spoken or accepted recklessly. Chapter 3. How many skills do you have? You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Song Hao started his career with the slogan, equal wealth, and now this is also the most taboo and feared thing. He originally intended to humiliate Luan by eating a flowing water banquet with the common people, but when Luan spoke up, he was waiting for the nobility, and he dared not take up this conversation. Moreover, there is an important guest present today, and one cannot listen to these words. Being held back by one sentence, the guests were watching the excitement again. Song Hao suddenly became furious and threw a tantrum, it's embarrassing. Get out of here, the Song family doesn't welcome you. Luan certainly won't leave, and he's too lazy to nag him. He directly explained his purpose and said, I'm here to pick up my father. Seeing that Luan was no longer writing on the topic of equal wealth and status, Song Hao's expression softened. He still has something to do and can't leave, he said, I'm here, I'll handle it. Anyway, Luan decided to terminate the contract today and draw a clear line with Song Hao. Marriage has always been the order of parents and the words of matchmakers. You can't do it. Looking at the poor boy in coarse clothes, Song Hao's tone filled the hall with disdain and contempt. I said, I'll do it. Lu En's resolute tone and gaze made everyone feel that he was not a teenager, but rather a seasoned person. You have a big voice, are you in charge of marriage matters? Song Haogan didn't believe it. But when he thought of Lu Ping, who was pedantic and difficult to deal with, an idea quickly popped up in his mind. After a moment of contemplation, he felt extremely wonderful about himself. So he immediately provoked him with words and heard him say lightly, whether or not you can make decisions depends not on your mouth, but on your abilities. Today, I will make an exception and give you a chance to see how many skills you have. If you can't pass my 3 levels, go back to fishing and farming obediently. Inside and outside the words, Song Hao didn't even pay attention to Luan. Even before he spoke, he had already concluded that he couldn't pass the level, not even a single level. Upon hearing these words, Luan was neither pleased nor surprised. He was worried that the other party would behave recklessly and be unreasonable. Since he had made a clear decision, he immediately agreed. Song Hao realized that his plan had succeeded and immediately stood up. "Everyone, it's not too late to have a drink later. Follow me around and see how much skill he has." When the host speaks and there is a play to watch, the guests naturally obey. Luan followed Song Hao and others to a spacious and flat courtyard. Seeing his servants carrying out a full set of weapons, he knew he was going to test his martial arts skills. Luan has been practicing martial arts with his grandfather Lu Yi since the age of 5, and has also studied under several spear and stick masters. He has practiced martial arts for 12 years, not to mention how strong he is, at least he has few opponents among his peers. With this physical foundation, coupled with 8 years of experience and courage in charging forward and fighting on the battlefield, Luan was not afraid of facing Song Hao with a confident face. After a slight movement of his hands, feet, muscles, and bones, Luan was about to ask about the competition when he saw the crowd suddenly disperse and a thin, bearded middle-aged man appeared on the sidelines, who was his father Lu Ping. Luan glanced over and saw the surprise of his own resurrection from death in his eyes, followed by a sense of regret, ultimately returning to a calm state, like a dry well. Before the competition began, Song Hao brought Lu Ping with him, hoping that he would witness his son's embarrassing behavior with his own eyes, in order to humiliate and torture him. The father and son looked at each other from a distance and didn't say anything. Luan secretly made up his mind that no matter what, he would never let this old thief succeed. "Luan, you are a junior. I won't bully you." Song Hao raised his hand and pointed to a pair of stone locks. "This is what I usually use for practicing martial arts, weighing 300 pounds. Within a radius of 100 miles, there are no more than 10 people who can lift it. Now you have enough time to step back, otherwise it would be embarrassing and too late to regret." Is this also considered bullying the younger generation? Looking at the heavy stone lock, the guests remained silent, but their eyes and hearts were like mirrors. Luan turned his head to look at the stone lock and couldn't help but chuckle. This old thief would actually put gold on his face, and this pair of stone locks would definitely not weigh more than 250 pounds. Not to mention 100 miles, it's 50 miles. With a little practice, there are many who can lift these stone locks. Without saying much or breaking through, he went straight to the middle of the stone lock, bent down, grabbed the handle with both hands, and with a slight effort, lifted it to the same height as his chest and abdomen. Then, with a flip of the wrist, the stone locks were flipped up and down. At the same time, with a slight bend of the legs, the 2 stone locks stood firmly on the shoulders. "Get up." With a loud shout, the 100-pound stone lock was easily lifted above Lu En's head. Later, he held a stone lock in his hand and walked around the field, and everyone was amazed by his divine power and praised him. Song Hao was surprised and greatly disappointed. The 100-pound stone lock not only did not stump Luan, but also made him show off greatly in front of everyone, which made Song Hao very unhappy. But he relied on his thick skin and tough mouth, watching the stone lock being lifted and pretending to be relaxed, deliberately belittling Luan. "It's pretty good, it's quite powerful." Luan then dropped the stone lock and smashed a piece of bluestone paving the ground, causing a piece of the stone lock to collapse. Song Hao saw it in his eyes, although he felt sorry for the stone lock and blue stone, he couldn't say much. At this moment, he only hoped that the guests wouldn't pay too much attention to Luan lifting the stone lock. So he shouted loudly, "Holding a stone lock is simple, and the next thing to see is whether you have the real ability." The preface doesn't match the conclusion. The old thief seems to be in a hurry. Luan thought to himself, there was no ripples on his face. The old thief was only able to achieve what he had today by playing with the wind, speculating and drilling into the market. He didn't have much real ability, and he could have much knowledge. How could he challenge him with his martial arts skills? The second level, archery. Song Hao took a yellow birch bough, pulled the bowstring, and his confident expression returned to his face. "I don't want you to take 100 steps to shoot the rooster, nor do I want you to take 50 steps. As long as you can shoot the rooster in 30 steps, even if you pass the level. Huang Hua Gong is a standard military weapon of the Song army, different from the bows and arrows made by the people for hunting. During the Dongting uprising, Song Hao collected a lot of them. Although most of the weapons were handed over to the Yue family army after defecting to the court, he still kept them privately. Even if an ordinary person has learned archery, they can never use the yellow birch bow they have never seen before easily in a short period of time, and there is no guarantee of accuracy. Moreover, Song Hao considered himself to have a trump card, so his smile hung directly on his face, almost announcing on the spot that Luan is uneducated and only worthy of going home to fish and farm. When everyone was confused about Song Hao's winning trick, they listened to his orders to catch a big rooster and tie it to a distant tree with a grass rope. The big rooster was already active and aggressive, but now it is tied to one foot and surrounded by many people. Whether it is fear or excitement, it keeps spreading its wings and soaring, trying to break free from its constraints. I saw the big rooster fluttering left and right, front and back, desperately flapping, with no clear direction to follow in its takeoff. Even if it occasionally stood, it was still preparing for takeoff in the blink of an eye. It is extremely difficult to hit it in this situation. At this moment, everyone understood why Song Hao was so confident and looked down upon his face. Moving the target, it would be strange if it could hit. Chapter 4. Scholar's Self-Recommendation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This translator is experiencing an error, please try another translator. Chapter 5. Poetry showcases heroic sentiment. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Zhang Pu's face was joyful, but he said in his mouth, "Uncle has been praised too much." The guests had already met Zhang Pu before, and now they take turns to compliment him again. It turned out that he was the son of the supervisor of the county of Xiangyin. No wonder Song Hao made such a big scene. Luan looked coldly at Zhang Pu, who could indeed be considered handsome and talented. It was only natural for the Song family to regret their marriage and make another promise. At this point, no matter what considerations Zhang Pu had when he jumped out, Luan couldn't resist and didn't want to. More than a decade ago, he became an official by taking the imperial examination based on his true talent and practical learning, rather than relying on grace and influence to enter politics. Why be afraid of cultural exams? My dear nephew, this guy is usually ignorant and incompetent. He is used to being wild in the lake. He hasn't read with his father for a few days, so your question should not be too difficult. The supervisor of the county child helped him get ahead. Song Hao felt much better, and felt a little floating again. The old thief has a thick skin and a stubborn mouth, and Luan doesn't want to talk to him much. What books have you read? Have you read the 3 classics and the Analects of Confucius? Zhang Pu boasted of his great talent and wanted to test what the other person had read. If he had not read any books, he would have taken them for nothing and it would be difficult to reflect his talent. Luan replied, "I have read the Analects thoroughly and have read the 3 classics." He is not modest, nor is he deceiving. Luan has indeed not read a few books with Lu Ping since childhood, and Lu Ping knows about it. If he claims to be proficient in the new interpretation of the 3 classics, and not to mention others, Lu Ping will doubt his identity. The two of them didn't know each other, let alone have any friendship, and had no polite gossip. They started the exam directly. As soon as Zhang Pu opened his mouth, he asked the simplest question. In the Analects of Confucius, Confucius said, "Study and practice, isn't that also true? Have friends come from afar, isn't it also true? What is the following sentence?" Luan blurted out and replied, "A person who doesn't know and doesn't sulk is also a gentleman." What is the explanation for this chapter? Zhang Pu asked. The interpretation is much more difficult than the scriptures, but this is the opening chapter. Those who have read the Analects should not understand it. This chapter is about Confucius' experience and insights in learning, Luan said as he scanned the crowd. Confucius said that after I learned knowledge and skills, I had the opportunity to personally practice and apply them, and I was very happy. With practical results, my reputation has spread far and wide. People with similar knowledge, skills, or ideas from afar heard of me and came to me to discuss and exchange ideas. We drank and chatted happily, which was a joyful time. As time passed, I mastered profound knowledge and exquisite skills, and others sought my advice and learning, but they could not understand me. I would not be angry about it. Blame them, because those who can learn a certain level must have noble character and moral character. In one sentence, it is important to apply what you have learned, practice and improve in the process of using it, and ultimately, do not hide it and pass it on to future generations. Listening to Lu En's explanation, Zhang Pu was stunned and his heart seemed to be hit hard. Lu Ping furrowed his brows and had a sullen expression, wanting to curse Lu En for being ignorant and incompetent. And the guests only listened to the play as tiled houses, with only a few people feeling lost in thought. After a moment of confusion, Zhang Pu regained his senses and forced him to ask, "Who made the note for what you just said?" "No one has made annotations." Lu En took a few steps forward and said as he walked, "The new interpretation of the three classics and the annotations of various scholars are just one school of thought. To truly understand the words of our ancestors and sages, we need to study the original text, put ourselves in their shoes, see what they say and do, not just rely on the annotations of our predecessors, nor blindly stick to every word." Zhang Pu does not agree with this explanation. It is not something annotated by famous scholars. How can we bring it up? But he couldn't say this because he understood that all annotations on scriptures are from scratch, and everyone can make explanations based on their own understanding. It was not until Prime Minister Wang Engshi sought support for the reform and led the compilation of the new interpretation of the three classics that it was unified into an official interpretation. Official education may not necessarily be right. Even if one refutes official education, there are no famous scholars who can immediately distinguish right from wrong. On second thought, it's better not to dwell on the annotations of the scriptures. So he looked for his own steps and said, "Annotations on the classics and the words of 100 schools of thought are complex and difficult to distinguish between truth and falsehood. Why not compare poetry?" The other party retreated and Lu En won a small victory. Although he is not good at writing poetry and lyrics, since he is taking the exam, there is no room for him to back down. Zhang Pu raised his eyes and looked around. He soon got the title, "By the Miluo River, big red lanterns are hanging high to celebrate the festival. You can write a poem under the name of Man Jianghong." Lu En didn't say much, looked up at the sky, white clouds fluttering, and his thoughts returned to the past. In front of the desk, the ups and downs of past and present lives, the obsession with achievements and regrets, were all intertwined, ready to erupt. He picked up his pen and waved it with a brush, and in an unworthy moment, he finished writing and abandoned it. Zhang Pu approached and looked at the lyrics, feeling uneasy and uncertain. Song Hao saw that Zhang Pu's face was different, so he immediately went over to check. The man surnamed Huang walked up with him and saw that the text on the paper was quite organized. Upon closer inspection, he cheered repeatedly. The guests stood in the distance, not knowing what Lu En had written. They only heard a shout of goodwill, feeling as uncomfortable as a cat scratching in their hearts, urging them to recite. So the man surnamed Huang held a rice paper in his hand and loudly praised, angry and furious, leaning against the railing, the drizzling rain rests. Looking up, he howled in the sky, with a strong and intense heart. 30 achievements and fame are dust and earth, and 8,000 miles of clouds and moon. Don't be idle, the young man's head has turned white, empty and sorrowful. The shame of Jingkong is still not yet snow. When will the hatred of the family and the country be extinguished? Drive a long cart, break through the shortage of Helan Mountain. Have the ambition to starve the meat of the barbarians, laugh and drink the blood of the Xiongnu. Wait from the beginning, clean up the old mountains and rivers, and face the sky. This word expresses one's mind directly, with lofty aspirations and grand momentum. Its momentum is like that of a towering sword, unstoppable and ready to break through the sky. Lu Ping can't believe it. This was written by his son who dances with knives and sticks all day. He didn't believe it, let alone Song Hao. Even if Luan had studied with Lu Ping, he would never have had such talent. Don't be idle, the young man's head turned white, empty and sorrowful. Good words, good words. The crowd remained silent, only the man surnamed Huang pondered repeatedly and shouted loudly. Zhang Pu has never heard of this poem before, and it is impossible to question whether it was plagiarized, but in his opinion, this word is definitely a rare and good one. But he couldn't praise it in public, so he said out of sync, not bad, although it doesn't quite conform to the rhythm, it can still be considered a regular word. If we talk about talent and learning on sight, no one can match Zhang Pu on the surface. After all, he has passed the township examination and obtained the qualification to participate in the provincial examination in the capital. So what he says is what he says, and no one can refute him. For Luan, just fill it out. He doesn't care whether others say it's good or bad. Luan couldn't help but struggle with the lyrics. In a dilemma, Zhang Pu could only grit his teeth and continue to write a poem on the topic of Dongting Lake. How about it at this moment? Luan's emotions were agitated. After a moment of contemplation, he blurted out, the smoke and waves of thousands of miles cannot flow out, and the tears of the leisurely people do not dry. If one day he were to soar above the clouds, he would call the sun and moon a new sky. Chapter 6. Fulfilling the Wish. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As soon as this poem was written, it not only left Zhang Pu, Lu Ping, the man surnamed Huang and others speechless and unable to move, but even Song Hao and his guests who did not understand the poetry were stunned and stood in the same place. Although the poem is average, its grandeur rises to the sky, and the endless pressure makes everyone dare not gasp for breath. For a moment, the whole room can still hear a gentle breeze. Change to a new day. This is a world shared by the Zhao family and literati. Who dares to say that it will be a new heaven? They couldn't believe that this heroic ambition came from a boy fishing and farming by the Dongting Lake. The shock in everyone's hearts could not be concealed, could be seen in their eyes, could be seen on their faces, and they did not know whether witnessing this poem with their own eyes was fortunate or unfortunate. Many years later, if anyone among them were still alive and could still remember this poem, they would understand that it is not actually a poem. It seemed that after a long time, the oppressive silence was finally broken by Song Hao's dry cough, and everyone was also relieved. Zhang Pu's heart trembled, his expression complex, and he took a step back without saying a word, indicating that the exam was over and he would no longer intervene in the face struggle between Luan and Song Hao. Song Hao originally had high hopes for Zhang Pu, not only to defeat Luan in his martial arts, but also to embarrass him in his studies and prove to everyone that Luan was indeed an ignorant and incompetent boy who lacked martial arts and literature. However, Zhang Pu's performance in the exam not only did not stump Luan, but also allowed him to showcase his extraordinary talents. He also surprised everyone and left a deep impression on them. How could Song Hao accept this result? I don't understand the meaning of scriptures, poetry, and literature. Song Haoran, who was thick-skinned and didn't care about his limited face, began to shout out, let's use real skills that can be seen and touched to compete. He has made up his mind that he will win one game today no matter what. As long as he wins a small game, he will win the whole game. For this, Song Hao specifically explained, Master Chen, if you win, you will be responsible for the safety of all 10 members of the Song family. The meaning of this statement is very clear. Giving important defense responsibilities will inevitably bring benefits, even fame and fortune. Chen Jie is not a foolish person, so he naturally understands what Song Hao means. There can only be one result in a martial arts competition, and that is winning. He is Master Luan, and his martial arts skills are also the best in the entire martial arts academy. As long as he doesn't let water flow, he can never lose to Luan in the martial arts competition. In front of Song Hao and everyone else, even if it was for himself, Qin Jie would not intentionally let himself lose and his reputation would be ruined. Fist is afraid of youth, and stick is afraid of old man. Qin Jie is skilled in stick technique, so he naturally won't give up his strengths and weaknesses at critical moments. I saw him take an eyebrow-tied stick from the weapon rack and dance like a tiger, winning applause. Upon seeing this, Song Hao felt much relieved and a smile appeared on his face. Using the eyebrow-straightening staff, Luan is both alive and disabled, which is so great. Lu Pinggang had just come to his senses from the shock of his son displaying the classics and poems when he saw that the martial arts competition was about to begin. He couldn't stop or help, his eyebrows furrowed, hoping that Qin Jie could show mercy and save his son's life for the sake of his past love. At this moment, Lu An's mood was vastly different from before, and his chest was filled with pride. To achieve great things, how can one confine oneself to small details and ruin righteousness? He immediately took a white wax spear from the weapon rack, lowered his waist step by step, shook the spear and danced, integrating the essence of the marksmanship taught by Yu Fei and Yang Zixing with his body and the white wax spear. Master Chen, I have offended you. As the words fell, a shot was shot, and the head of the gun shook as it ran straight towards Qin Jie's chest like a spirit snake. Although Qin Jie was a master who had been practicing with an eyebrow-raising staff for 40 years, he dared not be careless when faced with his imposing disciple. He shook his stick, swung away the attacking gun head, and nodded at Lu An's arm in response. If hit by the head of the stick, with his skill, Lu An's bones will inevitably shatter, and from then on, he will lose one arm. However, Lu An's shot had already acquired the essence of Yu Fei's marksmanship, with complete skills in interception, capture, and piercing. He had also experienced battles for a long time and was fearless in the face of danger. Upon hearing the crisp sound of the gun barrel colliding, Luan immediately turned the handlebar and pushed forward instead of retreating. I saw the swinging gun head draw a semicircle, immediately rebound to its original position, and instantly penetrate into Qin Jie's chest. Between lightning and flint, the attack was completed, and Luan withdrew his gun. The crowd had not yet understood what was happening, and they were at a loss. The master and disciple had already decided the winner. Qin Jie glanced at his bleeding chest, bowed to Song Hao with his stick and fist, then turned around and left with a gloomy expression. From then on, Xiangyin had no place for him to stand. Song Hao doesn't understand poetry and books, but he is proficient in martial arts. He is well aware that Lu An's just shot left no one in the Song family to stop. The most confident and impossible match to lose was when Song Hao lost. His face turned pale, his eyes lifeless, and he lost his previous demeanor. With no face left, my previous words were just a big joke. I don't know how the guests would joke about the legend when they left the Song family. At this moment, he was extremely hateful towards Luan, wishing to gather martial arts guards to rush forward and dismember Lu An's chaotic sword. But the guests were right in front of him, and Song Hao's thought flashed away. It's okay, it's okay. Shaming Luan failed, but instead humiliated himself. Song Hao had no choice but to publicly admit defeat. The old thief gave up, and Luan didn't want to say much to him. He directly came from Lu Ping, who was in a state of turmoil, to his engagement with Song Xian. In front of Song Hao, he tore it apart and said, "From today on, the Lu family and the Song family will have a clear understanding of kindness and righteousness." Then, Luan and Lu Ping bid farewell to the crowd and quickly left. The young man's sharpness is too exposed. Sooner or later, when he suffers losses, Song Hao already has thoughts in his heart. Watching the two disappear, Song Hao breathed a sigh of frustration. Having seen the big scene, he quickly adjusted his emotions. Although he lost face today, the termination of his engagement was not too bad. Glancing at Zhang Pu beside him, Song Hao's frustration quickly dissipated, and then summoned the guests to attend the banquet. Coming out of the Song family, Luan and Lu Ping were speechless all the way. As they walked quickly to the outside of the town, Lu Ping suddenly spoke up, "San Hua, it seems like you've changed someone." After a moment of silence, Lu Yun calmly replied, "I am no longer the same as before." Lu Ping was taken aback for a moment, then nodded and said, "After this calamity, you have grown up." Lu Yun's previous behavior was too abnormal, and he suddenly grew up to be able to explain many of his doubts. "Aren't you not fond of reading? How can you understand the meaning of scriptures, write lyrics and poetry?" Lu Yun couldn't explain this question, so he smiled and said, "Does my father think I took all the books lost at home to wipe his butt?" Lu Ping was speechless. Although he had doubts in his heart, his joy was even greater. "If my son self-taught and became successful, it would be a blessing from our ancestors. The Lu family has become a genius." The most significant doubt was resolved and Lu Ping recognized it. Lu Yun, who was reborn, successfully inherited the identity of the young leader of Dongting Lake Hongfeng village. Chapter 7. Selling to bury father. You are listening at novelfull.audio. There are many things to do for this rebirth. I was about to talk to Lu Ping about my future plans and planned to travel away from home for a while, but suddenly I saw him stop, as if he was attracted by something. Lu Yun turned his head and followed Lu Ping's gaze to see a young mother and daughter standing on the roadside at the town entrance. The daughter looked like she was 6 or 7 years old, with a face flushed with cold. The woman was in her 20s, half lowered her head, and a piece of grass was inserted into her coiled hair. Glancing at them, I felt a bit familiar. Upon closer reflection, I remembered seeing them here when I entered the town. Selling children and women is very common in this era. Lu Yun has seen countless lives and deaths, but every time he sees such scenes, his heart still hurts. But he is powerless now, unable to make them not sell or buy them back. Perhaps only by changing the world can things get better. Lu Yun reminded his father that it was already late and if he didn't leave, he would have to go home in the dark. However, Lu Ping's eyes were fixed on the mother and daughter who had sold themselves, as if their souls had been taken away. Lu Yun felt strange, and upon closer inspection, he couldn't help but be surprised. He saw that the woman's face was somewhat similar to her deceased mother, but much younger. If his mother is gone, he and his sister will also leave sooner or later. Lu Ping cannot live alone, and this woman's appearance is similar to her mother, which is also considered fate. With this in mind, Lu Yun asked the woman, "What are your requirements?" The woman immediately replied, "Buy a coffin and help me bury my father." "Is this just a requirement?" "I only sell myself, not my daughter," the woman cried as she looked at the child. "She's still young and wants to follow me. Raising a daughter costs money, and especially since the child is so young, it will take many years to raise them for free when they reach adulthood and get married. No wonder there hasn't been a deal at the Jinko station for so long." However, for Lu Yun, having more people at home is better. He didn't seek Lu Ping's opinion and directly asked him for money. Not long after his mother passed away, it would be difficult for Lu Ping to personally agree to take other women home, which would make it difficult for him to face himself and even more difficult to face rumors. Lu Yun had no money on him, and when Lu Ping took out his wallet, he only had a few dozen, which was not enough to buy a coffin. "I didn't have enough money with me. My home is in Hongfeng village, not far from here. If you trust me, come with me first." Lu Yun looked at the woman sincerely, hoping she could agree. But things went against her wishes, and the woman shook her head firmly without even thinking. Lu Yun wanted to persuade again, but someone came to interrupt him. "Don't show off if you don't have money. You want to deceive poor weak women. You're really shameless." A man in his 20s and 30s, holding a closed paper fan in his hand, slowly approached and smiled at the woman as he walked, saying, "Young lady, don't be fooled by them. Follow me. I'm familiar with the coffin shop in town, and I'll give you 10 guan of money to buy a good coffin. I am a stranger and I also need land." The woman put forward another condition. The man holding the fan said, "Just find a place to bury it." Seeing the woman's hesitant expression, Lu Yun immediately said, I have land at home. If you come with me, it will be convenient for you to worship in the future. Even if you can't take out the money, you have the face to snatch women. The man holding the fan sneered at Yun, carrying his money bag. Women are silent. A penny can't defeat a hero. Without money, he can't even continue speaking. Yun was helpless and was considering leaving or finding another way when someone suddenly said, "Brother Lu, I just wanted to go and pay you back, so I happened to meet you here." Turning his head, he saw a middle-aged man with a short beard approach with a smile, handing over a cloth bag and saying, "Brother Lu, the 50 taels of silver that Qian owes you today can be considered paid off." Yun doesn't know him, and his memory hasn't been noticeably interrupted in the past few days of unconsciousness. If we met, we wouldn't have any impression. Seeing Yun not taking the cloth bag, the man surnamed Qian smiled and said, "Brother Lu, if you don't take it now, I don't know when I will be able to pay you back." The other party called each other Brother Lu affectionately, making it impossible to refuse. If the other party admits the wrong person or has ill intentions, it's better to return the money to them afterwards. "Thank you very much." Yun took the cloth bag and opened it to take a look. It was indeed filled with silver and copper coins. He smiled and said, "Brother Qian, we'll talk later. This is over 50 taels of silver and a few hundred copper coins." Yun Ma counted the money and handed it to the woman. "You're going to argue with me, right?" The man with the fan was very unhappy and took out a piece of paper from his arms, holding it high and shouting in a boastful manner, "This is 100 taels of silver. Young lady, the silver ticket belongs to you." The man holding the fan handed the silver ticket to the woman. Yun felt a bit frustrated. If he couldn't make a deal with 50 taels of silver, he didn't plan to increase the price. With this money, he could definitely marry his father. The woman looked at the silver bill and the cloth bag containing the cash, and was unable to make a choice for a moment. Fifth brother. Ninth uncle. Just as Yun was about to lose patience, Lu Fu rushed over, accompanied by more than 10 other villagers from Hongfeng village. Upon seeing them, Yun took out 2 ingots of silver and said to one of the older ones, "Uncle Ming, could you please go buy a good coffin? Many people have already gathered around the town entrance, and it feels like the atmosphere is not right." Uncle Ming didn't ask much, just looked at Lu Ping. Seeing Lu Ping nod slightly, Uncle Ming took Lu and silver and called for 5 people before leaving. The woman seemed to understand at this moment, raised her hand to remove the grass inserted on her head, and handed it to Lu and with both hands. "Thank you very much, concubine." As soon as Yun held the grass in his hand, he heard the man holding the fan angrily curse, "Ignorant slut, this is 100 taels. 100 taels. Yun's gaze turned cold as he turned to look directly at the man holding the fan. "If you dare to curse again, I don't mind buying an extra coffin," he said. "What's wrong with scolding you? I still want to make your face bloom," the man said, waving his fan and hitting Yun's forehead. At first glance, Yun saw that the other person's nature was exposed and he was a rogue pretending to be gentle. With a wave of his hand, his fingertips swept over the other person's wrist. With a loud bang, the paper fan fell to the ground, and the man immediately covered his wrist in pain. His face turned red and then white, and he dared not say a word more. He hurriedly left. It wasn't until then that the middle-aged man surnamed Qian approached and smiled, saying, "Brother Lu, it seems you have something to do. I'll visit you again tomorrow." "Okay," Yun clenched his fists. It seems that this person is seeking help from him, not from old friends and acquaintances, as he is in such a hurry to enter the door. After the middle-aged man surnamed Qian left, the woman heard that her father was in a dilapidated temple 4 or 5 miles away, and Yun asked the villagers to help purchase some personal belongings. Subsequently, Yun, Lu Ping, the woman, and everyone from Hongfeng village carried coffins to gather the body. After a busy schedule, it wasn't until midnight that I carried the coffin back to Hongfeng village. That night, the coffin was closed overnight, and the next morning, a well was dug and buried. In front of the tomb, the woman held her daughter and bowed to Luan and Lu Ping with tears in her eyes. Li Yue is willing to be a cow and a horse in this life, and repay the great kindness of the duke. Lu Ping helped Li Yue up and comforted her. Luan didn't say much. When he returned home, he couldn't help but give the remaining money from yesterday to Li Yue. From now on, we will be one family, he said. Then he called Lu Huan and said to her, Huan, in the future, you can help Aunt Li take care of everything at home. Looking at the woman and child who suddenly entered the door, Lu Huan, although reluctant, did not object and vaguely agreed to come down. Just after going to pay homage to my mother, before the family matters were fully sorted out, the middle-aged Qian surname appeared in the Red Maple Village. Is there any royal law in Chapter 8? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Although I don't know why I came, the other party came so urgently that there must be something important. As he introduced the person into the house, Luan immediately asked, what is Brother Qian asking me for? You may as well tell me directly. I'm Qian Gui from Xiahe Prefecture. I came to Dongting Lake to do business in medicinal herbs. Seeing Luan so straightforward, middle-aged man Qian Gui immediately introduced his background and then bluntly said, I have a batch of goods that were robbed on the lake a few days ago. I hope Brother Lu can lend a helping hand. Okay. Luan did not hesitate at all, it was already too early to repay the favor. More importantly, he needs to take the opportunity to leave for a few days and do something urgent. Qian Gui was momentarily taken aback. Are young people so reckless? He didn't finish his words and didn't even mention the terms, so he casually agreed. It's probably a scam. Feeling puzzled, he tentatively said, the other party has a considerable background and the government is unwilling to intervene. No problem. When will we start? Lu Ongen didn't care about the background and roots of the other party. No one can stop his steps or restrain his hands and feet in this rebirth. Zhao Go and Qin Hui cannot, and it's even more impossible to be a mere water bandit. Seeing the young man in front of him so confident and witnessing his strength with his own eyes in the Song family, Qian Gui said without further ado, the faster, the better. Let's go now. After finishing speaking, Luan informed Lu Ping and Lu Huan and picked up the commonly used sticks. They left Hongfeng village with Qian Gui and headed straight towards Yanyun County. Watching Luan leave, Lu Huan clearly felt that his brother had changed, not as noisy as before. After a disaster, he was no longer the king of children. The county inn rested overnight, and the next morning Qian Gui and a group of people came to meet. Luan glanced slightly and saw several yamen officials, servants, and a young man in green clothes among them. The young man was not tall, but he was born pure and innocent, like a wealthy child who didn't do labor. Without any introduction from Qian Gui, he didn't ask much. Then everyone rushed to the dock together and took a boat to the Shifa Lake area. On Dongting Lake, the morning mist is vast and the smoke waves are vast. Standing in it, it is difficult to distinguish the southeast, northwest, and northwest. It is quite difficult to find the location of that group of water thieves' nest. Fortunately, the boatman hired by Qian Gui is a cooked fish from Dongting Lake, so there is no need for Luan to worry. The boat sailed on the lake day and night. After being repeatedly blocked and questioned by various forces, the next morning, it finally anchored at an unknown beach. Brother Lu, please accompany Yanyun on the ship and wait for my message. The boy in green is called Yanyun and is Qian Gui's nephew. After boarding the ship yesterday, Qian Gui briefly introduced him. Upon hearing Qian Gui's words, Luan was a bit puzzled. Did he invite him all the way to protect this young master? Since he is afraid of danger, let him stay in the county town. Before Luan could reply, Yanyun said, Uncle, I'm going together. Don't act recklessly. If you come, I'll take on a lot of risks and stay on the ship. Qian Gui's tone was somewhat stern. But Yanyun remained unmoved and walked straight towards the bow of the boat, jumping onto the wasteland. Then he turned around and arched his hand at Luan, saying with a smile, "I heard that the water thief is fierce." "Thank you, Brother Lu." Not obedient, unable to control, money is expensive and helpless. Luan was speechless for a moment, so he had to jump off the ship and come to Yanyun. The leader of the Tolerance King immediately sent someone to search for the water thief, while the others waited on the shore. Soon, news came that the water thief's nest had been found ahead, and it was inevitable that there would be many nightmares. The group immediately went to meet up. Not long after, everyone arrived at a deserted small hill and saw several thatched cottages standing there without any organization, built very casually. It was obvious that they were not a place to live for a long time, but rather a nest for water thieves. Luan has heard of this group of water thieves here before and has never seen them before. I don't know their specific strength. The leader of the team, Wang Bantu, had never dealt with this group of water thieves before. When he heard that his subordinates reported that there were more than 20 people in the other party, his face immediately didn't look good. After hesitating for a moment, Wang Bantu suddenly said, "Mr. Qian, to be honest, our clothes are fine in the city, but they don't work well outside the city, especially on water. Does Mr. Wang mean to add money?" Qian Gui's expression remained unchanged, but he felt a bit unhappy. As long as he receives the goods, the tea money will double. It's not about money. If money can solve it, why do you need to come to me? Wang Bantu continued to explain, "I promised Mr. Zhang to help you," referring to the Xiangyin territory, "but this is the Yuanjiang River." "Wang Bantu, speak up." Qian Gui frowned, as things seemed to be more complicated than he had imagined. Wang Bantu bluntly said, "If we were in Xiangyin, even if we couldn't capture these water thieves, I would have some confidence in negotiating with them under the names of Mr. Huang and Mr. Song. Now we can only go back first and then consider the long-term plan." "Go back. Come if you want, leave if you want, do you think this is your home?" Luan suddenly heard something unusual behind him, and turned around to see dozens of people standing up from the withered yellow reeds, holding knives and guns, cutting off their way back. Judging from the skills and expressions of these water thieves, they don't look like ordinary people. It seems that they have all been stained with blood and injured lives. Upon seeing this, Luan dodged and stood beside Zhang Yun, staring closely at the water thief Tu Zhang away as a precaution. Wang Bantu knew something was wrong and glared at Suo Li, who had previously inquired about the water thief. He then took the initiative to explain, "Xiao Wu and I were caught as soon as we came over, and there was nothing I could do. Brother Wang, don't blame me." At this point, even if there was anger in his heart, Wang Ban could only hold it back for now. Seeing that these water thieves were not good at picking on each other, he quickly begged for mercy and said, "I often work for Mr. Huang and Mr. Song in Xiangyin. I know you all have extraordinary backgrounds. Can you please let us go for the sake of the two masters? I promise, I won't say much." "It's too late." The leader of the water thief stood in place with a knife in his hand, his gaze sweeping across the faces of the crowd. "Since we have landed, we must leave our lives behind," he said. "Are you too arrogant? Do you think hiding in Dongting Lake is no royal law?" Zhang Yun, young and energetic, shouted loudly. "Yuner, don't talk too much." Qian Gui's heart skipped a beat and he quickly stopped it. Having seen many things and knowing that it was difficult for him to do well, he quickly bowed to the water thief and said, "I am Qian Gui from Xiahizu, and my brother Law Zhang Xiao is an official in linen. He has come from a long distance and did not have time to pay his respects, which was quite rude. If we were to leave, the batch of medicinal herbs from the previous time would be given as a gift to everyone. How about that? Zhang Xiao." Lu En's heart moved, and he was familiar with this name. Decades ago, the Jin army invaded the south and this person was indignant. He went to the Jin camp to serve as a communication envoy. When he arrived at the Jin army commander's camp, the Jin people asked him to kneel down as a subordinate. He not only refused, but also reprimanded the Jin people in the form of formal documents for provoking border provocations and cracking down on Hunan. The Jin people were angry and imprisoned him, but he has not returned yet, and his life and death are unknown. I don't know if the Zhang Xiao mentioned by Qian Gui and the Zhang Xiao he knows are the same person. If the same person happens to meet, one must protect their descendants thoroughly no matter what. To be honest with you, it's no use lifting anyone out here, they'll all die. This is the rule. The leader pulled out his knife and let out a bird's cry. The water thieves immediately launched an attack formation and came in half encirclement. Seeing the other party's lack of salt and oil, full of murderous intent, Qian Gui regretted it deeply. This group of tolerance could not be expected. Brother Lu, there must be nothing wrong with Yun'er. Please take good care of him. If you return to Shaoxing, you will definitely receive a heavy thank you. Chapter 9. Yanyun Pavilion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hurriedly explaining the aftermath, Qian Gui had to fight against the water thief to buy Luan some escape time. But as soon as he took a few steps forward, he was covered in vital parts of his chest and abdomen by several advancing water thieves. Seeing this, Luan pulled him back. At the same time, the stick in his hand suddenly turned like a wheel, chopping and poking, and in an instant, he shot down the weapons of the 3 water thieves in front of him. With no weapons in hand, he was very brave and lost 9 points. The 3 lightly injured water thieves quickly retreated. Slow down. A sudden mutation occurred, and a strange color appeared on the head of the water thief. With a shout, the other water thieves immediately stopped walking. Are you very good at fighting? Can you beat me? Can you beat the world? When you come out to mess around, you need to talk about power. Who's your subordinate? The leader's words were inexplicable, and the others looked bewildered. Luan guessed some clues, put away his stick, and replied, "You should ask who is my subordinate and whose subordinate you are." Upon hearing these words, the leader's mind couldn't turn for a moment. Before he could figure it out, he heard Luan say, "Tell your boss to come out. When I reach my territory, I dare to shout and scream. Enough of my life." Rough voices came from behind, and Luan turned his head to see 6 or 7 figures walking leisurely from afar, wearing armor and drapes. Upon seeing the other party's attire, Wang Bantu felt as if he had been granted amnesty and quickly took a few steps forward, saying, "Your Excellency, our own people. We are from the Xianyun Yamen, and it was all a misunderstanding." The leader is unkempt, almost 30 years old, with a burly figure and dressed just like the official army. "Who the hell is your own person?" He didn't give Wang Bantu a second glance and went straight to Qian Gui and Zhang Yun. After carefully examining them, he smiled and said, "I'm sorry, I know you have a background, but Dongting Lake is not a place where you can come. Since you have come, you must stay. May I ask your name? You are officials and soldiers, why do you kill and rob on the water?" Seeing the other party wearing armor, Qian Gui knew it was difficult for him to leave alive, but he couldn't die inexplicably. "I will not change my name, I will not change my surname, Liang Qiu. As for the reason, it's okay to tell you all. Anyway, it's all death." The thief leader Liang Qiu said with a smile on his face, "I'm a team of people with 2 identities. I can rob anyone I want. Are you from the god of wealth?" Liang Qiu's words were interrupted, and amidst suspicion, he became a little angry when he saw that the speaker was an unattractive young man. Yu Fei had a person under his command named Li Qi, who had good financial management skills and was skilled in management. He specialized in managing the fields and running restaurants and shops to raise military salaries for the Yu family army. He held a high position in the military and was known as the God of Wealth by many. Seeing the other party's reaction, Luan understood and chuckled lightly, "This is a dead end for you. I can give you a way out. You are a commoner, who do you think you are? Even older than Mr. Li." Liang Qiu was amused. "Is your father the heavenly king Laozi?" Lu En's former father Yue Fei was really like the heavenly king Laozi in the Dongting Lake area, but that was a matter of his past life, and if he really said it, it would be a joke. However, Lu En had his own support and did not respond directly. Instead, he muttered, "Fish and dragons dive in the water, folding their wings into the yen clouds." Upon hearing these words suddenly, Liang Qiu's face was filled with shock. "You are Yanyun Pavilion." It is rumored that in the early years, the Yuejia army commander's mansion recruited dead soldiers, formed secret spy teams, infiltrated the northern puppet Qi and Jin-occupied areas to gather intelligence, contacted various civilian organizations and rebel forces, and paved the way for the army's northern expedition. They aspired to capture Yanyun and called it the Yanyun Pavilion. Only a small number of people in the Yu family's army knew about Yanyun Pavilion. Due to the promised generous treatment, Liang Qiu had also been recruited, but the selection conditions were strict and he was unable to succeed. It was because he knew the name of Yanyun Pavilion. "You're young and don't seem to have experienced it in the military." The other party knew about Yanyun Pavilion, and their identity was bound to be extraordinary. However, Liang Qiu was shocked and had doubts in his heart. He dared not believe it or believe it all, and his tone softened a lot. Guanren joined the army at the age of 12, and at my age, he has already led the army alone. Lu En did not explain directly, the cabinet is not entirely composed of soldiers, and there are many loyal and righteous people in the martial arts world. Guanren's junior brother holds important positions among them. Although I couldn't understand what Lu En and Liang Qiu were saying, Lu En's identity seemed unusual, not just as a fisherman. Qian Guijian saw that there seemed to be a turning point in the situation and immediately signaled to Zhang Yun not to talk too much and cause trouble. The land of Jingchu is about to change, and even the god of wealth cannot protect himself. If you have the ability, I will ensure that you enter the cabinet, change your appearance, and from then on, the sky will be high and the sea will be vast. The identity of the members of the Yanyun Pavilion has always been kept confidential. Although the other party's identity is not clear, they know that the junior brother of the winning official Yue Yun is in the pavilion, and this level of identity is extraordinary. Yue Fei, the commander of the Yu family army, Zhang Xian, the deputy commander, and Yue Yun Quan, the successful official, have been detained and interrogated in Linen for several months, and rumors have already spread throughout the military. Even if he didn't understand the situation, Liang Qiu knew that if there were any changes in the military, he, as the god of wealthly Qi, the mastermind in controlling the shipping and dock of Dongting Lake, would be destroyed. Lu En's promise was like a life-saving straw to Liang Qiu at this time, and he couldn't refuse it. After thinking for a moment, Liang Qiu had already made up his mind and asked, "These brothers have been going through life and death with me for many years. Can we take them with us?" "Of course. It is precisely at the time of employing people that those who are good at warfare are better off than others." Lu En has no reason to disagree. Upon receiving a response, Liang Qiu quickly adapted to his new identity and glanced at Qian Gui, Wang Bantu, and others. "Little officials, should these people drown and be thrown into the lake?" "Brother Qian is my friend," Lu En shook his head. "Don't call me an official in the future. My name is Lu En and I am currently residing in Hongfeng village, Xianyun." "Okay, listen to Mr. Lu's arrangement." With a wave of his hand, Liang Qiu and his brothers put away their knives and guns and retreated, releasing Qian Gui, Zhang Yun, and others from the surrounding area. A disaster dissipated in the blink of an eye. "Brother Lu, thank you for your great kindness. Whenever there is a mission in the future, Qian will definitely sacrifice his life to follow." Qian Gui crossed his hand and bowed with sincere words, almost shedding tears. "Brother Qian's words are heavy." Lu En arched his hand and asked, "I just heard that Zhang Gongzi's father was an official in Linen. I wonder if he is the same person as Zhang Xiao, who was sent to the Jin dynasty decades ago but did not return." "Exactly. Have the Lu brothers heard about their brother-in-law's mission to the Jin dynasty?" Qian Gui was surprised. This matter has been going on for decades and few people have mentioned it. Lu Ondao said, people who are loyal and righteous, no matter how long it has been, there will always be people who remember their loyalty and righteousness. On the same day, I first met Luan at Song Hao's house. Qian Gui saw that he was both civil and military, had extraordinary aspirations, and intended to help and make friends. Looking at him again, he suddenly felt a bit arrogant. Since Prince Zhang is a loyal and righteous descendant, this misunderstanding will be completely erased. Leader Liang, return the things to them. Liang Qiu readily responded and took immediate action. Not long after, half of the cargo that Qian Gui was robbed of was moved to the shore and loaded onto the ship. Having experienced this calamity firsthand, Qian Gui's gratitude was indescribable. He said he would stay in Xiangyin, set up a banquet, and rest drunk. As soon as Liang Qiu and others were gathered, Luan had something to do and bid farewell to Qian Gui and Zhang Yun, letting them take the lead. This way to Xiangyin, there is a tolerance from the Yamen, and various forces will give some leniency, so there won't be any difficulties halfway. Mr. Lu, do these people really need to be eliminated? Chapter 10. I Want a Rebellion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This translator is experiencing an error, please try another translator.